Our movie begins with Hatch, who finds himself embroiled in a major case, clearly facing a tough situation. What's strange is how he handles the situation with extreme nonchalance, lighting a cigar in front of the investigators without a care, and even taking out a can of tuna from his pocket to feed his cat, making it seem like he's just lounging in the international park rather than being interrogated by the police. Shortly after, one of the investigators asks him who he exactly is and what crimes he's accused of. Hatch then gives him a brief overview of his life, highlighting the monotonous routine of his days, from waking up early to drinking coffee, doing some exercise, going to work at the factory until late at night, and returning home to sleep with his wife, Becca, and their children, Blake and their little daughter. These events aren't just isolated to a day or two per week, they characterize his entire year because there's nothing new or exciting in his mundane life. As the days go by, we learn that Hatch has a condition similar to obsessive-compulsive disorder, which makes him worry about his children every night. One day, he's shocked to find two armed thieves in the house, increasing his concern for his children. He grabs a stick from the kitchen and cautiously tries to call the police, but the thieves spot him and threaten him with a gun, demanding to know where the money is. Hatch reluctantly points to the cash on the table, claiming it's all he has because he mainly uses his Visa card for everything. In a swift move, his brave son, Blake, approaches the thieves, refusing to let his father be intimidated. A violent confrontation erupts between them. At this moment, Hatch has the opportunity to strike the second thief on the head, take her gun, and hand him over to the police. However, he doesn't do so because he's cowardly and asks his son to let the thief go without causing harm. Blake is shocked to see his father behaving cowardly and feels unable to take action. Later, Becca, Hatch's wife, begs the thieves to take what they want without hurting anyone. Meanwhile, Hatch notices a distinctive tattoo on the second thief's hand and focuses on it to remember her appearance for later use. The thieves, annoyed by Blake's intervention, hit him on the head, take the money, and flee before the police arrive. Shortly after, a large number of officers arrive to investigate the robbery and are surprised to learn that Hatch never approached the thieves, even though they could have harmed him and his family. This night passed without any losses. However, Hatch feels guilty towards his family because he didn't fulfill his responsibility towards them, especially after the actions of his son and wife, whose respect for him decreased after this incident. The next day, Hatch goes to the factory where he usually works, and there he meets Charlie, his wife's brother, who is the factory manager. Charlie reproaches him for not being able to protect his family yesterday and gives him a gun to ease his mind and show that he is responsible. But the strange thing is that Hatch remains passive as he is and puts the gun in the fridge because he doesn't want to resort to violence no matter what happens. These actions indicate that this man surely has something hidden behind him, and the blame and reproach don't end there. It continues with his father-in-law, who is the owner of the factory, and tells him that his daughter Becca called him today, crying because her husband turned out to be immature in his actions and couldn't protect his family from the thieves. At that moment, Hatch becomes even more upset and tries to change the situation. He tells Eddie that he wants to buy the factory from him for a certain amount because he wants to quit working there and focus on management instead. At the same time, he leaves something for his children for when they grow up. He tells them, "Give me a chance to think, and I'll respond to you soon on this matter." Then, Hatch goes to his office to listen to music on the radio and calm his nerves for a bit. However, we discover that this is a cover-up, and he has placed a transmitter device in the radio to secretly communicate with his brother Harry. This is because Harry has completely disappeared from the country, forged his death certificate so that nobody knows anything about him. At this moment, Hatch tells Harry about the situation that happened to him yesterday, and they both realize that his wife and children are upset with him, and they are not treating him well. Harry tells him that he did the right thing by prioritizing the safety of his family and asks him not to return to the criminal world no matter what happens because he's not ready for the troubles he might face. Later, Hatch visits his father, Mansell, at the nursing home to visit him and make their favorite meal together. They continue to talk about their old experiences together, along with their brother Harry, who, as we mentioned earlier, is missing. Then, Hatch returns home. Afterward, he tries to act normally to keep appearances, but he notices his daughter's sadness due to the loss of her necklace. Hatch asks her calmly, "Sweetheart, "Where did you last see the necklace? It might be lost here or there." His daughter responds that the necklace was in the dish containing the money, so the thieves might have stolen it yesterday. This situation deeply saddens Hatch, and he becomes distressed. His personality undergoes a complete change, and he decides to return to the world of crime. He goes to his father's nursing home to retrieve his gun and his police badge to ensure his safety from all angles. As we know, Hatch never actually saw the thieves during the robbery incident, but he memorized the tattoo on their hands. He searches through all the tattoo parlors in the state until he meets an informant who directs him to Haight, who was previously in the military. Hatch arrives at Haight's place late at night and pretends to be a police officer, showing him his badge to gain his cooperation. However, Haight, being more astute than Hatch anticipated, recognizes that the badge is old, indicating that Hatch is lying to him. Haight gathers his men, ready to confront Hatch for deceiving him. However, one of them notices the tattoo on Hatch's hands, which indicates that he served in the military before. And of course, at that moment, all the guards are afraid of him and they hold him accountable, pointing out the location of the two thieves with the tattoo he was asking about. After hours, Hatch arrives at the house of the thieves who robbed him the day before, consisting of a man and his wife. We see Hatch holding the man, not sparing any part of his body from the beating he receives to force him to reveal the location of his daughter's necklace. However, the thief tells him that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Hatch is on the verge of finishing them off because he senses they are lying to him, but then he hears the voice of their little crying daughter, which makes it difficult for him in the end. He forgives them and leaves the house in a fit of anger, continuing to hit the wall with his hands out of frustration, wanting to release his pent-up energy on someone, but no one dares to confront him at the moment. After a while, Hatch boards the bus on his way home, but in the meantime, he encounters a group of drunk thugs who are clearly trying to harass a helpless girl who is riding with them on the bus for no reason. Hatch rejoices at that moment because he found the right people to teach manners to and to unleash all his pent-up energy that has been bottled up for years. So, Hatch goes to confront the young men, hurling the worst insults at them to provoke animosity. Within moments, the altercation begins between them. Despite being an elderly man alone against 5 young men, none of them escapes unscathed from his blows. For example, some of them are stabbed with a knife, while others have their noses broken. People are bleeding from all over their bodies, unable to continue the fight to the end because of Hatch's extensive combat experience. In the end, this helps the helpless girl to return home without being harassed by those young men. Hatch then returns home and finds his wife worried all night because he's been delayed. As soon as she sees him battered like that, she understands that he has returned to his days of mischief and the criminal world. We find that she is very happy with this new situation because she has grown tired of the routine person who is neither exciting nor adventurous next to her. We also see the head of the Russian mafia, named Julian. First, we get a brief overview of him, knowing that he is mentally unstable and does whatever comes to his mind, even if it's wrong or illegal. During a meeting, we find him suddenly grabbing a glass and smashing it on the face of one of the top businessmen, just because he said something he didn't like. This, of course, shows us who we are dealing with. At that moment, a call comes to the mafia leader Julian from his guard, informing him that his brother, TT, was involved in a major accident and is now in the hospital between life and death. So Julian rushes to the hospital at top speed to find out who attacked his brother TT in this manner, so he can seek revenge and get justice for him. We discover then that the boy TT was one of the drunken youths that Hatch dealt with yesterday on the bus. And, of course, Julian, the mafia leader, is known for never letting his rights go, so he goes to one of TT's friends who is also injured and learns from him that the person who attacked them yesterday dropped a card belonging to an iron factory in the south of the state. So Julian takes the card and tells his men to go search for the person mentioned on it until they find out exactly who he is. The next day, Hatch wakes up early as usual to prepare breakfast for his family, completely forgetting about the altercation until his brother Harry calls him and informs him that the Russian mafia leader, Julian, is looking for him because he killed his brother TT yesterday. Harry asks him to forget about his wife and children and meet someone named the barber to help him out of the trouble he's in. After a while, Hatch meets the barber to obtain a complete file of secret information about the mafia leader Julian, and they warn him initially, telling him that he won't let go of his rights, So it's better for him to find another place to live with his family rather than risk losing his life and the lives of those closest to him. At the same time, Julian knows a great deal of information about Hatch from his assistant, ranging from his first job to the factory he wants to buy, down to his home address and everyone he knows. Of course, Julian wants to take the most severe revenge, so he orders his men to go fetch him from his house tonight, whether alive or dead. At the end of the day, Hatch has dinner with his family, and suddenly he notices a group of armed men approaching their house in their car. He asks his family to quickly hide indoors until this problem is resolved. Hatch then decides to cut off the electricity to the house and engages in a literal showdown, surprising the gang with his considerable fighting ability. However, his age begins to show, evident from his lack of fitness and the sense of fatigue and exhaustion that do not leave him during the confrontation. Ultimately, Hatch cannot continue until the end because of the gang's relentless assault. Exploiting his exhaustion, they knock him out and take him with them in their car to deliver him to Julian and leave him to deal with him. But while they are on the way, Hatch suddenly wakes up and finds himself trapped in the car. Seizing the opportunity, realizing that no one is paying attention to him, he reaches for the fire extinguisher in the trunk and sprays it on the gang to disable them. Of course, the driver cannot see the road due to the dust on the windshield, causing an accident in which only Hatch survives. Naturally, he is worried about his family, and he asks him to focus on himself. After a while, he goes to his wife and children and asks them to go hide in any country until his problem is resolved because they are not safe where they are now. Then Hatch returns home and reminisces about his old life. We learn that he was once a mercenary soldier specialized in secret missions that nobody else knew about. One day, he had a mission to assassinate the famous businessman Alan because he had stolen a large amount of money from the government. Hatch carries out his mission as usual, intending to kill him, but at that moment, Alan starts crying and begging him to spare his life because he has a family, and he cannot leave them alone. This moment makes Hatch feel remorseful for what he was about to do, and he wants to repent. He decides to forgive Alan and give him a second chance to live in peace. After a year passes, Hatch goes to check on the criminal Alan to see if he was sincere in his words or if he was deceiving him. Hatch is surprised to find that the criminal and thief has changed. Now he's a completely different person, living a peaceful and happy life with his family without committing any crimes. At that moment, Hatch feels jealous of him and decides to retire from the world of crime himself, aiming to become a peaceful person and live with his wife and children without any violence, as we saw in the previous period. However, it seems that the family that has no trouble will later suffer. Later, we see Hatch taking his money and his gold spike and burning down the entire place to hide any trace of the bodies inside. At the same time, we switch to two armed men from Julian's men who go to the nursing home with orders to kill Mansell, Hatch's father. The man who is watching television and seems completely detached from the world turns out to be Mansell, who surprises the gang with his distinctive approach, easily defeating them without anyone from the nursing home noticing. The next day, Hatch buys his father-in-law's factory and evicts him and his son, then closes the place completely to manufacture a large number of weapons that he will use in his revenge journey. Later, Hatch goes to Julian's mafia company and declares war on them, resulting in almost none of them surviving that day due to Hatch's rage. He not only resorts to killing but also decides to burn millions of Julian's dollars as a warning to anyone who dares to approach him or his family again. At night, Hatch goes to Julian's theater, anticipating betrayal, and attaches a timed bomb to his hand, warning Julian's guards that if anyone approaches him, the place will explode. Hatch informs Julian that he has burned down his company and all his money because he wanted to hurt his family, and he requests that Julian find another country far away from him. Otherwise, the revenge next time will be much harder than this one. Julian doesn't let Hatch go easily. Realizing he has nothing else to lose, he decides to take all his men and pursue Hatch with their cars to finish him off after what he did. However, Hatch anticipates Julian's betrayal and has a backup plan. He lures Julian and his men to his factory to hold a party with his father Mansell, who has returned to a life of crime, along with his brother Harry, who has finally emerged from hiding to help his family. The three of them together are formidable opponents for Julian's gang. Meanwhile, Julian takes advantage of the fact that Hatch and his family are out of ammunition and enters their office intending to kill them. However, he underestimates Hatch's intelligence and resourcefulness. Hatch attaches a timed bomb to Julian's bulletproof vest and detonates it, killing Julian instantly. Eventually, the police arrive and arrest Hatch, taking him to jail to interrogate him about the events at the factory. However, it later emerges that Hatch has influential connections that manage to get him acquitted of all charges, allowing him to return to his normal life with his wife and children in peace after finally deciding to retire from a life of crime for good. And that's the end of our movie. If you liked it, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to receive updates on new summaries.